back. Right, okay, so in a second I'm going to turn to Dr. Emily Grossman, who's going to talk to us about the science. Is this mic working? I'm not sure if you can hear me. You're okay, you're good. All right, just before, Dr. Emily, if you could come to the forehead, just as you're coming here, I just want to add something to what Gail said there, and that is that you do not live in a free and open democracy if crucial information, you do not live in a free and open democracy if crucial information that would inform the demands you make of politicians and the way you vote is withheld from you. If crucial information is withheld from you, it is not a democracy. And one of the worst culprits is obviously here, News Corp. Quick couple of pieces of information for you. 10th of September last year, the UN Secretary General stood up, told the world he was going to make a major speech on climate change, asked the media to come along and listen to what he had to say. Virtually hardly anybody, any news outlet in the UK went along to listen to his speech, and he was talking about the upcoming October IPCC report. He'd seen the threat of the climate feedbacks in that report, and he wanted to warn the world that we face runaway climate change, and he said this is a direct existential threat. I think the British people, everybody in the world deserves to know that. This lot here didn't want you to know it. Now I'm going to turn to the science, because Dr. Emily knows about the science, and over to you.
Evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Emily Grossman, and I'm here representing Scientists for Extinction Rebellion. I first came along to Extinction Rebellion in April. I came along as an interested spectator. I came along to support my partner Kimway, who was leading some of the Samba band, which I'm sure you all agree are absolutely amazing. You've heard some of their stuff tonight. And I came along to the rebellion as someone who spent my whole life immersed in seeking the truth. As a scientist, that has been my whole reason to live, is to find the truth. And as a science communicator, which is what I do now, my mission is to speak that truth to the public, to find a way to communicate science in a way that people can understand it, that it's clear, and that the truth can then be acted upon. Now, in my work as a science broadcaster, as a writer, as an educator, I prided myself as someone who knows a lot about the science of the major issues that are going on this planet. Now, of course, I knew a bit about climate change, but I came along to the rebellion in April thinking, really, is it really that bad? Like, hearing all these people out on the streets saying, you know, we're all going to die and it's a mass extinction and we haven't got long left and civil unrest and food shortages, and I'm thinking, this can't be true. Because if it was true, I would know about it. In fact, more than just you would know about it, but everybody would know about it. It would be in every newspaper, it would be in every news channel, it would be there would be documentaries, there would be no way that our government would let society continue as it's been continuing if what people were saying on the streets in April was actually true. After April, I made it my mission, for my own personal reasons, to explore as deeply as I could the science surrounding climate change and ecological collapse. I tried to find, my job as a science writer, as a science journalist and a communicator, is that's what I do for a living. I go back to primary sources, I go back to data, I go back to peer-reviewed science, I talk to climate scientists generally. So that's what I set about doing. Since then, I've been working alongside some of the top climate science researchers in the world, some of the top ecologists, and I've been reading every piece of data, of peer-reviewed science that I can get my hands on. And I'm here to tell you that since that day, I've barely had a good night's sleep. The reason is, the more I read, the more I questioned, the more I looked at all the other side of the argument, the studies that apparently don't back this up, going, okay, well, let's give some weight to that. The more I read, the more terrified and horrified I became at where our society, where our humanity, where our planet is heading, hurtling towards. with absolute certainty. And the more outraged I became at the fact that the truth is not being told. The newspapers, the media, like the ones we're outside today, they are hiding the facts, they are burying the facts. The government are ignoring the facts. There is an international consensus of scientists across the globe that climate change is happening, that it's caused by humans, that it's happening fast, that it's going to be devastating, that it's already devastating in many parts of the world, and it's going to get a lot worse. Ecosystem collapse is happening, and it's going to get a lot worse. Land degradation, loss of crops, loss of our ability to feed ourselves, loss of pure water to drink, loss of air quality, which is what we require to breathe, is already killing people across the planet. It's going to get worse, and yes, it is caused by humans. So in the last few months, myself and a load of other brave scientists, who are now called Scientists for Extinction Rebellion, we've been coming together, we've been verifying the science, we've been making sure that the words that are put out by Extinction Rebellion are verified, are backed up by peer-reviewed science. We've been preparing arguments how to rebut the claims that say, oh, but we've been warmer before. Oh, but there's been higher carbon dioxide before. Oh, but this, that, and the other. It's all straw man arguments. They don't stand up to peer-reviewed science. They are not true. And part of what we have now done is we've produced between us, between a load of climate scientists and science communicators and biodiversity science and ecologists, we've created what we've called a scientist declaration in support of non-violent direct action against government inaction about the climate and ecological emergency. This declaration has been circulated over social media. We read it out publicly as a group for the first time in a demonstration outside the Science Museum on Saturday. We read it out in the banking district on Monday, where 8 of us lay down in the road and refused to move until the police picked us up. And I'd like to acknowledge that this story of scientists across the globe coming together, not just to say that the science is true, not just to say that we are heading towards catastrophe and to committing ourselves to irreversible crisis on this planet with incalculable human suffering and loss of life as an inevitable consequence, unless we stop greenhouse gas emissions now. But we lay down in the road not just to say that, but to say that as scientists who have dedicated our lives to seeking truth, dedicated our lives to understanding the world, to making sense of the world, and we have been assured that if we stay unemotional, if we stay impartial, if we simply report the facts, we have been assured that we will be listened to and that appropriate action will be taken. We have been lied to. This has not happened. The public have not been told because the media have not communicated it, and the government have not listened to our warnings. We have been warning as a scientific community about the emergency that is unfolding, that we're almost too late to stop. We have been warning about this for 40 years, and no government action has come anywhere close to addressing this. We have 8 years left before we use up the carbon budget, before we commit ourselves to warming that goes above 1.5 degrees or 2 degrees, which will be catastrophic for our planet. And scientists are now saying, these are people, scientists are human beings who generally are not like me. They don't like to stand up and talk in front of people. I don't like to, but I'm happy to. Most scientists won't. Most scientists want to sit doing their research, doing this amazing work that they do. They don't want to be out on the streets. They don't want to be campaigning. They don't want to be speaking to the press. They don't want to be being interviewed. They don't want to be putting their names to things, because we've been promised that if we remain impartial, we will be listened to. They don't want to be pushy. They don't want to shout about things, because we've been told not to. But now these scientists are coming together and saying we have nothing left to do. And as human beings, we have a moral obligation as humans to now do something beyond telling the truth. We now have to take action to make sure that that truth is heard and to make sure that it is acted upon as if it were truth. Now, this declaration that we read out outside the Science Museum, I would like to acknowledge that actually there are occasionally bits of press that are really coming through and supporting us. And I want to acknowledge that the Daily Mail reported on our protest outside the Science Museum. They reported that 300 climate scientists across the globe have said, yes, we are justified to be on the streets, to be taking non-violent direct action, that civil disobedience is now the only way forward. They reported on this, and they reported on it fairly, and they gave us a platform to get that word out. And I want to say that since then, our declaration, as of a few hours ago when I last checked, the site has crashed because it's so busy, and we are on more than 1,000 signatures. These are climate scientists, climate science experts, biodiversity experts, ecologists, forestry managers, earth science system scientists, senior scientists, professors, heads of department, lecturers across the globe from more than 20 countries who have signed a declaration, 1,000 or more, supporting you being here on the streets, saying this is all we have left to do, this is our only choice. So I want to say two last things. One is, the press can help us. They do help us occasionally, but we need more. We need them to tell the truth. We need them to not frame this as a debate. There is no debate. We're way past that. We need them to tell everyone the truth about what's going on, to act as if the truth were real, because it is real. And on behalf of the 1,000 and more scientists who've signed this declaration in support of civil disobedience, in support of non-violent direct action, on behalf of them, I would like to thank everybody who's been on the streets for the last 10 days, who was on the streets in April, who've been campaigning tirelessly, who've putting themselves on the line, who are being willing to be arrested, who are being willing to undergo hardship, to come away from their family and friends, to be here to support this movement. And I want you to know that when people in your everyday life say to you, oh, but it can't be that bad, can it? Why are you doing this? Oh, but we've been warmer before. Oh, but it's not going to impact us. Oh, it's not our problem because we only release 1.5% of global carbon. By the way, that is not true. We do on our home soil, but that's because we outsource pretty much all of our fossil fuel emissions to other countries. We import our food, our manufacturing, our clothes from other countries that are then blamed for our greenhouse gas emissions. We invest in the City of London. 15% of the global investments in fossil fuels come from the City of London. Think how small we are compared to the rest of the world. 15% of the world's investments come from the City of London. In the last 5 years, the UK has invested £2.5 billion in overseas fossil fuel subsidies in low and middle income countries. And we have the gall to say, oh, but we're only producing 1.5%. That's because we're outsourcing the whole lot. And as Gail said, this 2050 target, it is nowhere close to being enough. Firstly, the government are not putting the plans in place to meet it anyway. They say they are, but an internal review went in, the Committee of Climate Change, they went into the government in July, and they looked at the measures that were being put in place to bring down greenhouse gas emissions. Out of the 24 goals that the government had set in response to Parliament, declaring a climate emergency earlier this year in response to 24 goals that were put in place. It was just the beginning. Only 7 of those were actually being met. Only 7 of those were actually being addressed. So the government are lying to us in terms of their plans for 2050 anyway. More and more investments are going into fossil fuel emissions abroad. More and more of your money, your pensions, your investments in the city banks are going into funding fossil fuels. We've just opened 2 new gas-powered turbines in the Drax power station to produce even more greenhouse gas emissions. We're bankrolling HS2, which, as Gail said, is a big deforestation project in itself. As Gail said, all of this represents a crime against humanity. So when you go home and you go and speak to your friends and family and they say, but it's not real, it's not true, oh, there's other sides of the argument, go and read this random paper by this random scientist who actually says, no, it's not an emergency after all. First of all, ask them who funded that scientist. Ask them what their discipline is. Ask them where they got their information from. And if you don't want to ask them, take a look at the emergency page on the Extinction Rebellion website. Take a look at some of the reports from NASA. Or just tell them to follow Scientists for Extinction Rebellion, to ask us, to follow me, Dr. Emily Grossman. I can point them towards the right people. But fundamentally, the bottom line is, every straw man argument that has been put as to why we shouldn't be doing this protest, why it's not as bad as people think, why actually we're doing as much as we can, we should be protesting in China. Well, yeah, we should as well, but we still should be doing a lot more here. And every argument that's put to you, take it from me as a representative of the climate scientists across the world, 99% consensus from climate scientists across the world that actually it is as bad as all that, and that every argument that has been pulled apart now by climate scientists as to why it's not true. So on behalf of the scientists, thank you for doing what you've been doing. Thank you for being here. Keep going. We'll be back. We've done 3 actions already. We will be doing more. We're going to keep going. We're going to keep growing. If you know any scientists who want to be involved, please tell them to, well, anyone who wants to follow our work. We've got a public-facing page on Facebook, which is called Scientists for Extinction Rebellion. We've got a group on Facebook, which is for scientists, which is, again, is called Scientists for Extinction Rebellion. We've got a Twitter handle @ScientistsX, @ScientistsX. So if you're streaming or photographing or videoing, please put it on Twitter, put it on Facebook. If you want to follow me, if you've got any questions, if you've got deniers who you want to pass in our direction, you can follow me @Dr. Emily Grossman on Twitter, or my Facebook is Emily Sidoni Grossman. But on behalf of the scientists who I am representing here tonight, thank you, keep going, and we'll be back.